Every nation is in debt, the invisible architecture of the modern world. Every country on earth is drowning in debt. The United States now owes over $38 trillion, the highest figure in its history. The European Union carries around $14 trillion. Japan's debt stands at nearly $9 trillion. Even oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia or export powerhouses like Germany and China carry enormous debts. But here lies a paradox if everyone owes money. Who are we all indebted to? I'm a financial historian. Where money, power, and history collide, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Debt is not just a burden. It is the architecture of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, every boom and collapse is built on an invisible scaffolding of credit. And if you follow that chain of debt long enough, you reach a disturbing truth. The world owes no one else. It owes itself. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. Today, global debt has surpassed $315 trillion, 3 times the size of the world economy. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to the very beginning, to the birth of debt itself. The birth of debt, war, and kings. Long before credit cards or digital transfers, the idea of national debt was born on the battlefield. The year was 1694. England was at war with France, and the royal treasury was empty. The king turned to merchants for help. In exchange for future tax revenues and ongoing interest payments, merchants lent money to the crown. To manage this system, the Bank of England was created. It was a revolution. The state could now spend money it didn't yet have. In return, investors were given something priceless, a promise, backed by the government. That promise could be bought, sold, and traded. This was the birth of government bonds, and with them, the modern financial system. France copied it, the Dutch improved it, and the newly founded United States adopted it to finance its war of independence and westward expansion. Debt became not a symbol of failure, but of credibility. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. Empires once conquered lands for gold. Now they issue bonds for interest. The battlefield had moved to the balance sheet. Debt, the world's new export. Fast forward 3 centuries. Debt is now the world's biggest export. The U.S. owes $38 trillion. Japan over $9 trillion. And the world adds $1 trillion of new debt every 100 days. Every nation borrows, every bank lends, and every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pensions, is both a debtor and a creditor. So who's holding the other end of the rope? America's debt. Who holds it? Roughly half of U.S. debt is held by private investors, not by government agencies. 2/3 of those investors are American. Banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining 1/3, about $9 trillion, is foreign-owned. The biggest foreign holder is Japan, $1 trillion, followed by China, $800 billion, then the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say America owes China, they're only about 2% correct. In truth, America owes most of its debt to itself. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Fed buys those bonds back, creating new dollars in return. Citizens pay taxes, which go toward bond interest, and that interest returns to American pension funds. It's a perfect cycle. The debt is real, but the creditors are within the same system, the global cycle, debt without borders. This isn't unique to America. Japan lends to the U.S. The U.S. lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations through the World Bank, and developing nations invest their reserves in Western bonds, lending it all back. This global loop is like a game of hot potato, except the potato is made of promises. Every nation holds another's IOUs. Every promise is backed by another promise. It's like a poker table where every player borrows chips from the next. And the only rule is, no one leaves the table. The real power, markets and central banks behind every government bond lies an invisible web. Hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks. They decide who borrows cheaply and who pays the price to survive. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse, governments fall, and economies reshape overnight. Democracies decide who governs, markets decide who survives, and at the top of this system sit the high priests, central banks. They don't just manage debt, they create it. When central banks buy government bonds, they create new money in return. One side's liability becomes the other's asset. Every dollar in circulation represents someone else's debt. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every banknote, every digital dollar, carries an invisible signature, I-O-U. What happens when trust fails? The system runs on trust. As long as investors believe governments will keep paying interest, it functions. But when trust breaks, finance collapses. And history has proven this many times. Greece, 2010. Debt became unpayable. Yields skyrocketed. The European Central Bank and IMF stepped in. But rescue came with pain, higher taxes, spending cuts, and mass unemployment. For a generation, bailout meant sacrifice. Argentina defaulted multiple times. Debt became a national curse. Sri Lanka couldn't repay foreign debt. Fuel shortages and political collapse followed. When systems crash, creditors suddenly become visible. The IMF, rating agencies, anonymous bondholders, the unseen hands gripping nations by the throat. And yet, after every collapse, the system restarts. Old debts are restructured. New loans replace the old. The machine runs again. Same balance sheet, new names. Truth. Debt exists to be rolled over, not repaid. Modern governments don't take debt to pay it off. They take it to renew it. This isn't a conspiracy, it's policy. When you or I borrow money, we're expected to repay it. Governments, however, treat debt like a subscription. They issue new bonds to pay off the old ones. This is called refinancing. Interest becomes the real product, the rent of stability. The global economy depends on that rent. Like a shark that must keep swimming to stay alive, the system must keep borrowing to function. The U.S. will never pay off its $38 trillion debt. It will roll it over forever. Japan has done the same for decades. Its debt exceeds 250% of GDP, yet its bond yields remain near zero. Investors don't expect repayment. They expect renewal. Government bonds are the safest collateral in global finance. Because there's trust. If the U.S. suddenly paid off all its debt, banks and funds around the world would lose their safest assets. The dollar supply would shrink, deflation would follow, and the economy would crash. Paying the debt would destroy the very thing keeping the system alive. So governments keep issuing more, carefully, continuously. Debt becomes the heartbeat of capitalism. Debt, illusion, and reality. When politicians promise to balance the budget or pay off the debt, they perform an illusion. The goal is not to eliminate debt, but to keep it sustainable, manageable, and believable. Because when confidence disappears, numbers lose meaning, interest rates spike, and an economy built on promises stops functioning. That's the real secret of public debt. The plan was never to repay it. The plan was to make the world believe it always would be. As long as that belief holds, the numbers can grow forever. But trust isn't shared equally. When we say we owe the debt to ourselves, it's only half true. Interest payments don't flow evenly. They move from workers and taxpayers to capital owners. Debt isn't just between nations. It's a mechanism that transfers wealth between classes. That's why global inequality rises alongside global indebtedness. The system rewards those who profit from debt and punishes those who only pay it. Final words. Lenders aren't villains. Borrowers aren't victims. Both are parts of the same engine, because both are human. But if that engine runs out of fuel, the question, who do we owe, stops being abstract and becomes personal. Because at the top of this pyramid, there's no single face to blame. Not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. It's all of us. Modern finance turned debt into money. Governments issue it. Banks multiply it. Investors trade it. Citizens live by it. Debt once symbolized dependency. Today, it symbolizes balance. But if that balance ever breaks, trust collapses, and we remember again. Debt is nothing more than a promise that can't be kept forever. If this gave you a new perspective, follow, like, and subscribe, because history has the answers. You just have to know where to look.